All right. Okay. Good morning. Uh, the Discord did not update? Ah. Hmm. I think maybe if it's not it's minimized, it doesn't like to update or something. Okay. No. All right, there we go. Good morning. Thanks to anyone watching. If you are new and don't know, if you're new and don't know, my name is Tim. I go by Foamy Guy on GitHub and Discord. I usually work on CircuitPython on stream around this time of the week, Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Time US. I am usually here working on CircuitPython. I will note, like I did yesterday, next week I will be here on the 11th, but I will be out the following week. So no stream on Saturday the 18th. If you do know me, then you may know I do the deep dive on Fridays sometimes as well. There will be no deep dive from me on the 17th either that Friday. So I'll be no streams from me on that week of the 17th and the 18th, 2 weeks away. If you are new, though, and don't know what I'm talking about, CircuitPython is the main thing that I usually work on during my streams. CircuitPython is a version of Python that runs on tiny computers called microcontrollers. You can learn some more about it at circuitpython.org, and I would also encourage you to join us on Discord, which is linked below there on the screen down that way. There are CircuitPython channels in the Adafruit Discord where you can catch up with folks in the community, learn about stuff, get help with things, all kinds of stuff like that. It is basically a way to program microcontrollers. You typically will plug them into your computer. They show up like a thumb drive. You can edit some code, some Python code on that thumb drive. When you save it, the microcontroller will execute the Python code for you. That's kind of the 50,000 foot view, high level version of what it is and what it does. As always, I will try to remember to say thank you to Adafruit. Adafruit is a hardware and software company based out of New York. They make CircuitPython possible by paying a team of folks, including myself, to work on the project, but all of the source code is published under open source licenses, so anyone's allowed to take the source code, use it for your own purpose, put it, run it on your own device, like add support for your own device, even if it's a product that you sell. All of that is totally fine. CircuitPython is open source project. All the source code is out there, and Adafruit makes that possible again by paying a team of folks to work on that code and publish it under that license. So huge thanks to them. If you would like to help support them and those of us who work on CircuitPython, one of the easiest ways to do it is by purchasing hardware from them at their website. They have microcontrollers that they design and manufacture. They also sell some third-party ones. And they also sell all kinds of bits and bobs and doodads that you can hook up to your microcontrollers to make fun projects with. And then there is, of course, the Learn system, where there are all sorts of fun projects documented for you if you need some ideas or you want to make something specific. Huge thanks to them. Huge thanks to everyone who purchased hardware from them. That really does keep the whole thing going. Today we're back on the Fruit Jam. I do have it hooked up to the HDMI capture, so I just have it fed into VLC here. If you don't know Fruit Gym, it's like a little all-in-one sort of virtual computer, like a small, self-contained single device computer, sort of Commodore 64 era vibe, or like video game console. I think that's where I was going with virtual, was video game console. Sort of the other thing that this device is like. So it's got a DVI output there that has an HDMI shaped plug on it. And I just have that fed into a capture card so that I can get it onto my PC to make it easier to stream and show you all what I'm working on. What is up, C. Grover? Good morning. Here's with some coffee. Okay, I think, so today I am just diving right back into the logic gates simulator that I worked on yesterday on Deep Dive. So if you'd like to see a little bit more about this, you can check out yesterday's Deep Dive. I kind of gave a very brief overview of the different parts of the code and how they interact together. And then I worked on the wire entity so that we could have these longer connections. Originally, like the virtual push button would have been right here next to this little shorter wire tail. But now we have some sort of extenders there. And I will freely admit, I'm not 100% happy with the way the extenders work. I kind of wish we could extend up right here. The way this sort of is right now, at least the way this is forced to go to the left, instead of just being able to go up and then over. I don't necessarily care for too much, but I think that I am going to try to force myself to work on something else instead, because I think it's a relatively minor thing in the grand scheme of things. I don't want to get bogged down spending too much time on the exact ways that the wires can be drawn, because really the wires are kind of ancillary. The focus is the gates and everything. So maybe I will get back to it at some point. Maybe I'll have an idea of an easier way to do it. I did brainstorm a couple of ways to do it. I don't know that I would call them easier, but they would be more flexible. They would support what I want, but I'm not sure that I actually want to implement them. So I will kind of chew on that in the back of my brain. Maybe at some point I will take a stab at it. But for now, today, I think what I would like to work on instead is more of the actual interactability. So right now there is a mouse and I can move it around, but the only thing I can really do with it is click on these virtual push buttons to change the signals. There's no way for me, like for instance, right now to place a new gate using the mouse, or to place a new button, or to place wires, or to place anything really, right? So right now, everything that is in the workspace, which is the area that all these gates can be placed in, everything in the workspace is just hard-coded inside the code. It creates a gate or a panel or a button or a wire, and it places it into the workspace. But at the end of the day, I would like for this to be like a usable application, right? Where the user, the person running the application, can like do all the stuff in it without having to be going back and forth between the code. You know, if you're trying to also learn Python coding, like this could be helpful for you, going back and forth and doing it in code, but we also want it to be like for a user who's not necessarily coding. So we need a way to add elements to the workspace, and I think the way that I want to do that is gonna be... I have a few ideas, actually. So the kind of lowest hanging fruit that comes to mind would be, you know, there's like an add button somewhere, like a little plus symbol or something, you know, maybe it's in the top left or something. You click it and then it reveals a pop-up or whatever, right? It opens a new section of the screen, a new section of the app, which will have all the different logic gates for you to select which one you want to add in wires and buttons and everything else. You will select the one you want. you click it or you press enter on it, and then you can go and then click in the workspace, and that entity will show up where you click. Drag and drop would be super duper nice as well. Drag and drop would be super nice as well, but I don't know if we're gonna get to that all the way. Drag and drop. So the main, I will say probably the biggest like hurdle I think with implementing drag and drop is being able to show where the entity is at any given time, right? Like drag and drop is hard unless you can see where you're taking it, right? Like you need to drag that thing and it needs to move with your mouse so you can see where it's going to go. Which would actually end up being a little bit tough due to the way the workspace and the entities work. Not impossible, probably, but tough. And I'm not sure, like, it might kerchunk, 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 kerchunk. I don't necessarily think it would look super good. But maybe there's, like, you click it and you can then click somewhere else and it will move. Without dragging, you just click once and you can move it. We might need, like, an actual move. I guess we might need like a move button as well, right? If we have an add button, maybe we need a move button also so that it knows if you click the move button and then you click a virtual push button, for instance, it would know that you're trying to move the button, not click on it to change its logic. Yeah. So do we just jump straight into adding new ones, or do we try to tackle moving first? Because moving, the act of moving an existing one, kind of is pretty much half of what we need to do for creating a new one, right? When we're creating a new one, the second half of what we need to do is tell the system where to put it, tell the workspace where to put it. Which means we need to get input from the user, we let them click somewhere, and then we put it where they clicked. Yeah. I think that that's actually probably the best way to do it, is let's try to get moving to work first, and then we'll basically be able to reuse the second half of it for adding new ones. So I think it's going to be easiest to probably just let the workspace handle this, because we already have this logic in the CircuitPy where we're going to check for mouse clicks. If the left click happened, maybe we could use right click to move instead of having a button. We could use right click, actually. Yeah. So then we would not, then we could maybe get away without a move button, because you could right click on a virtual push button. It would know that that means you want to move it, not toggle its state. Yeah, I kind of like that, I think. It's less visual because there's not a separate button, but that means you don't have to like mouse all the way up, right? And then back to where you're going. Okay, so let's do that. And in fact, what we'll do is, so we could either change this to also expect the the button that was clicked. Something like that. I mean, realistically, I guess we could pass the whole pressed buttons into there, and then we could just let it do it inside. Yeah, that's probably the way to go, actually. If it's not none, let's say if it's not none and its length is greater than 0. Then we'll pass in that. We need to go in there and actually accept it. Whoop, 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 whoop. All right, so that's going to be a list. This is going to be if left is in the pressed buttons. We want to do this. But at some point we might have to worry about, like, what if they clicked both mice? I don't think I want to worry about it right now, though. These can actually be out here because it doesn't matter which button was clicked, left or right. We're going to want to know where it clicked on the screen, like what tile is it. We're going to want to know what entity is there. And in fact, if there is no entity there, then it doesn't... For now, we're just going to say it doesn't matter that they clicked. We're going to ignore it. Maybe we could do something like where if you click or right click on a empty spot, maybe that also like prompts you to add a new thing there later. But for now, we'll ignore any click that is not on an entity. Okay, so once we get to here, we know that they have clicked one of the mouse buttons. We know that they have clicked on an entity specifically. So yeah, if it was a left click, we will call handle click. If it was a right click, we will do our move logic, which is going to be what? So for move, I think we want to have like a self.moving entity. There's only going to be one of them, so I don't think I need a list like the IDE was going for there. If they right-click on an entity, then we go, the moving entity is now the clicked entity. And we basically, so we actually need to say if the moving entity is none, then when they click, yeah, actually we're already gonna have to undo this. So when they click and the moving entity is none, we're gonna set the moving entity to the clicked entity. This is actually going to be here. So if they left click on an empty spot, nothing happens. If they're right clicking, if there is no moving entity and they clicked an empty spot, then nothing happens. But if they clicked an entity, it gets set on this. And then if they... So else, moving entity not none, then we need to update its location, right? So we're going to go self.moving entity dot location equals the new location, which is the place where they clicked, tile X, tile Y. And we probably need to like do stuff also. We're gonna need to update the tile locations. We are gonna need to erase the spots in the tile grid. We actually don't want to change the entity yet. Greetings and salutations from sunny Toronto. What is up, Gordy G, my friend? Nice to see you today. Okay, so broadly speaking, we want remove entity from current location and then add entity new. So for removing, we need to go self. So we actually want to loop. So for the location in the clicked entity.tile locations, actually the moving entity. So all the locations that represent that entity, is that not tile locations? It's not on the entity class, I guess. Or I don't know. I know it's there. So for location in that, we want to go self.tilegrid location equals empty. Get rid of it where it's at. Do we need to do the tile palette mappings? I'm gonna try just not doing it. I think it won't matter because I think the only time it would start to matter is when a new entity got placed in that same spot. And whenever a new entity got placed in that same spot, it's going to call its own apply state mapping, which is going to set the tile palette mapping anyway. So I don't think we need to do it right now explicitly. We just empty out the tiles. We need to update the location, and then we actually need to update the tile locations as well, which is gonna be a little tricky because right now these are just hard-coded inside of the init functions. But we don't want that actually. We need like a def init tile locations. So yeah, for all of the 2 input 1 output gates, this is actually going to be all the same. So I'm going to put this in the parent class. Excuse me, to input one output gate. To replace. Make sure it still works. Okay. So now, when we move it to a new location, we can call a function we just created, which we technically probably, I guess, shouldn't have made private because we want workspace to call it. Or, actually, here's what we should do. Here's what we should do is maybe location should be a property. If location was a property, then we could put this logic in it and it could just do it for us. Unfortunately, I do have location right now is actually just not a property, but a variable. So we'd actually need to change that. Wait, I don't... Oh, yeah. So we would make a getter and a setter. So we would set the location, and then we would also... No, not that. We would also init tile locations. But that's not on entity. Currently. So I think what we do is we put that on entity. Also, def init tile locations, just raise for the superclass. So subclasses have to do that. We also need it here actually. Okay. This one is probably the one that matters the least because it's 1 by 1. I guess the wire is going to be the same. So this one actually probably would work without doing anything, but it's fine. So let's run it again, make sure it still works. Hmm. Entity 283. Oh, I didn't do the rest of the wires. I did one wire. Yeah, we probably want a super class for wire, or I think like one of my plans for wire is try to make it so we don't need multiple ones, right? Right now I have horizontal wire, I have bottom left wire, I have vertical wire, I have top right wire. It's kind of annoying. Be nice if we only had one and it would like connect to all the sides that have valid connection. I don't know how hard that will be, but that, ooh, no, happened. Weird. I don't know why that scrolled me. I clicked on something and I scrolled. Keep not having the function. I've not copied anything other than the function. Oh, we're out of wires anyway. Reminds me of the graphical interface logic layers of early versions of SynthEdit. Oh, wow, yeah. It is, kind of. Yeah, very similar, sort of like flowcharty vibe. Hopefully it's not going to get quite as crazy. I don't necessarily want crossing wires for sure. But I mean, luckily we won't have nearly as many different things. Wow, this is crazy. This is awesome. What is this? It was from SynthEdit. Interesting. Play with this. Wow. Okay, let's. The functionality is. Oop. I need to put the cooldown back. I started working on a cooldown at one point because it was being weird, but it turned out that it was being weird for a different reason. I took the cooldown out. Oh no, actually I have the cooldown. Double click then. To 1/10 of a second. It needs to be longer. Hmm. Okay. So this should update for us, which means when we move a thing, we just need to do one thing. We just update the location. That is going to call init tile locations inside of there. Another thing actually we probably want to do is go ahead and call apply state mapping. And technically we probably want to also call workspace.update because if we don't, then the gate is not gonna, like, the logic is not gonna get applied in the new location. So if you move it to a location where nothing is hooked up to it, then it doesn't matter much anyway. But if you move it somewhere where there would be something hooked up to it, then you would expect that it will instantly start applying its logic, right? So, I think for that, though, we don't want to actually do that inside of here, because I think that might be recursive or something. Instead, that should be, I think, here. So handle mouse click, we update the location, and after we've updated the location, we can just call self.update because we're inside the workspace. So let's do that. I gotta run to the restroom, so I will be right back, and then we will test this. So BRB. Okay. So rerun it. Might actually work. I'm not sure. Oh, untype has no tile grid. $29 and gate. Space is none. How would workspace be none? So probably this is because doing something earlier than I had expected. So on line 60, we tried to create an OR gate, then got us to 504. We tried to set the location, which then tried to call apply, which then tried to use the workspace, which is the next line. Truth be told, though, we don't really want to do that yet. I mean, we could move this to after. Maybe that will make it not be broken, but the next one is going to have the same problem. All of them are going to have the same problem. And pretty sure this is I think now our location property is kind of stomping on the toes of add entity a little bit. These are kind of doing some of the same stuff now. So even if this works, which I'm not sure that it's gonna, it's gonna mean that we're doing some stuff multiple times, which I don't necessarily want. Maybe we don't even really need works. Well, no, we definitely need workspace add entity though. We definitely do need that. Because we need to get the entity into the list of entities that's inside the workspace. Maybe it just needs to only do that inside there? But does it actually run this way? No. Output has no input one. Yeah, we're kind of running into this problem now because I've done so much inside the location setter. It's kind of like trying to use stuff that's not ready yet. Like input one doesn't come until here. And it's gonna, because it's trying to, well, no, we haven't called update yet, actually. Update. Let's don't do this. Will you be able to have buttons and outputs tied to actual IOs? Yeah, that's the plan. That's the goal, at least. All right, so that works. We could, I guess, just call this from out here when we do this. But yeah, I want to have the buttons, the physical buttons that are actually on the device, which is why I called this one a virtual push button. At some point, we'll make a physical push button. And then I would also, I think, like to be able to output to NeoPixels. There's 5 NeoPixels on board. At the very least, I would like to be able to turn them on and off. I don't know if I'll go all the way to doing color with them. Maybe we could do an output that has 3. Maybe we could do a NeoPixel. So like this is the output panel, and I think of it as an output because, you know, it gets an input and it does something with it, and it doesn't pass it along, right? It's giving feedback to the user. So I think of the NeoPixel as a different kind of output output panel. Maybe we could have one with 3 inputs, one for red, one for green, one for blue, and the user could then be able to like set up the signals and it will turn on and off those colors. So you could make any of the 6 possible color combinations. Plus white, I guess, 7. and black if you count all off for 8. Yeah, maybe I'll do that for NeoPixels. Maybe we want to. Well, could you? Yeah, so you could. It still counts as a simpler one as well, because you could choose to just only hook up the green or whatever, right? And then it would be a simple on-off for green. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. But yes, is the short answer. I would like to tie them to at least the physical hardware, the NeoPixels, and the buttons. I/O pins we could probably do, but it will be I will say I/O pins will be slightly trickier because it will have to like create a digital in-out object and manage it essentially. And I don't just want to create one on every pin, so it will have to like, you'll have to add it, choose a pin, and then it gets created. So I don't know for sure on I/O pins, but definitely buttons and NeoPixels I would like to do for sure. Realistically speaking, I/O pins are like the buttons are an I/O pin, so maybe it would be easy to adapt buttons to just work as I/O pins, or vice versa. 7 for the colors, I think. Okay, I don't know why it thinks this doesn't exist, but that's fine. They do all have that. I guess we should probably have a not implemented one. In fact, I actually already have a not implemented one here, so I don't know why. I guess maybe it. I don't know why it doesn't think it has that. That's fine. Black isn't a color. I don't know. I don't know anything about color theory. And black. Well, let's go with this. Black occupies a space in the palette. So in my opinion, in my world, in the things that mostly matter to me writing programs, black is a color. But yeah, like I said, I don't know anything about color theory. But the important bit is black is here. It occupies a spot in the palette, just like every other color does. With NeoPixels, it gets awkward since to make them black, you turn them off, so it's like a lack of doing anything, obviously, but a lack of color, if you will, a lack of light in that case. But in my head, it kind of does color. I'm just okay with being wrong about stuff. All right, should this might work. Let's try moving the gate. If I right-click the gate, crashes instantly. Nice. None type has no tile locations. 54 workspace. I did this wrong, I think, right? This should be is none. Yeah, this should be is none. Because we are going to set it if it was none. And if it's not none, then that's when we want to do something else with it. Like it's a really dim color value. 0 hex. Okay, so I right-clicked it. There's no visual feedback, so like nothing happened visually, but I did right-click it and it didn't crash, so that's a good sign. One thing I just realized is it's going to be a little awkward if it works, which it did not. Why did it not work? Um... Okay. So inside of add entity, it also does the setting of the tiles inside of the tile grid. I tell you what, let's make a remove entity. Let's go self.entities. I think we could just remove that. And then do this. So loop over all of the entities is actually just range. Loop over the length of the number of tiles. Update the tile grid at tile locations I to empty. Like as a palette value, 8 values. Right click, crashes instantly. At least it lets you know where you stand. Yeah. At least, yeah, it did something, which is good. It's better than nothing. The perplexing nothing is always the hardest to troubleshoot. Okay, so that remove will now take it out of the list and make it empty. And again, I don't think we need to do the applying of the palette mapping, because I think when a new entity gets put there, it should do that at some point for us. We're going to be duplicating that, I think, because of the other thing I was talking about before. I want to duplicate it even more. So now here, instead of this, we could say self.remove entity, the moving entity, remove it, update its location, and then we don't need to do this, and instead we can just re-add it. All right, so again, right click, no visuals, but there we go. Okay. So now something that is a little weird is you can see my mouse, like I haven't moved my mouse yet. And the thing is that basically the entity gets placed by this top left tile. Let's see if this actually works though. So if I take, can I move the output panel? So let's go right click it. Oh, right. We need to, so yeah, here's one problem for sure is you can overwrite half of an entity, which is bad. So we should do validate that landing zone is empty, so that we don't end up like this with half of an entity getting overwritten. That will be bad. The other thing we need to do is after we do successfully move something, we actually need to set moving entity to none, so that if we right click something else, it will then set that new thing as the moving entity. Okay, this time it's a little bit more apparent what I was about to talk about before, which is that the location, the value, the XY coordinates that are returned to you by the location property, and you know, the same ones that are used for the location property setter, are the top left tile coordinates of the 4 tiles that make up this entity. But for the gates, truthfully, we probably want to use this tile instead. Which means here, I think we want to go If is instance the moving entity, if that is a logic gate, a 2 input 1 output logic gate. Is that really the full name of that? That's such a wordy name. I think it's just gate. Gate. It is gate. Still very wordy. All right, so if it is that type of class, we're going to do something different. Else, we're going to do this. And what we'll do here is actually very simple. We will just go the tile we clicked on +1. Is that right? No, that's wrong. -1. I'm still not sure. It's a coin flip. It's one of those two, I'm pretty sure. All right, so we click, right click. There we go. Yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want. Perfect. Okay. All right, so that worked. Can I move the button now? Virtual push button. And to make this easy, I'm not going to mess with the wire right now. I'm just going to... Okay, very good. Click. Ooh, doesn't work. Okay, but the reason it doesn't work is there's no output. That is unfortunate, actually. Okay, we'll get back to testing that in a second. I want to leave a note for myself, though, because I probably want to change that. So right now, inside of update, when we call update on the workspace, it's actually only looking for entities that have the type output, which right now the only one is the output panel. And it calls update on that. And then if you watched the deep dive yesterday, I kind of walked through in the code how that sort of chains together calls to the rest of the entities that are connected to make them update. The problem that we face now is I do not have an output connected, which means when I call workspace.update, the logic gate logic does not get applied. So this doesn't turn green like it should, and this doesn't turn green like it should, since that's an OR gate. If I move the output panel, then I think it will work. Oops. I wonder if it should be a left click after you're, like, right click to start moving and then left click to drop. That's what I've done that like every time so far accidentally, so I'm inclined to say maybe that's how it should actually be. Oh, it still doesn't work. Are the gate symbols just bitmaps, or are they made from graphic primitive circle line? They are bitmaps. Show you the sprite sheet. Wait, where did this save yesterday? Where I saved a new copy of this yesterday. In documents randomly. Okay. These are, so it's a sprite sheet. Everything, it's all tile-based system. It's a sprite sheet. The gates are 2x1. The output panel is 2x1. The button and the not gate is 1x1. and then I was working a little bit on wires last night. Those are one by one. And basically what it does is it's, you know, obviously you can see the wires are different colors here. It's remapping the palette with these sort of placeholder colors, the dark red, the dark green, the dark blue. It is remapping those to be either black or green inside of the apply palette state, apply state palette mapping. This is using tile palette mapper to overwrite that dark red, dark green, and dark blue with either black or green for the wire segments. Missed yesterday, I'll have to watch. It's not a stupid question. Yeah, no, I don't think that. Definitely not a stupid question. It's an interesting way to do it. I would not have considered doing this. I will say I have been consistently surprised by the different and new usages that I have thought of for tile palette mapper. So tile palette mapper is something I worked on. I might have had the same problem with the YouTube chat. Looks like you said hi in the YouTube chat a while ago, but it was not showing up for me. Sorry about that. I think I had it technically like minimized. It wasn't updating. Where's I going with that? So the tile palette mapper is something I made initially for the editor, and my original goal really was to be able to just have a cursor, you know, moving around in a tile grid. But Scott actually had a vision for this way to remap the whole list of colors into a different list of colors, which has proven to be incredibly flexible. I never would have imagined that it would be able to do something like this with it. So it's really cool, actually, the different kind of stuff you can do with it. So I am actually confused about why this doesn't actually work. I thought this would work. Oh, I know what the problem is. Yeah. So the problem is that also inside of init, these are hard-coded. And they need to get updated based on the new location. So this should probably just be in here. And luckily / nicely, it's called update. No, but it does call apply. Luckily / nicely, this is actually the same in every single one of the two input, one output gates. So we could actually just do this here. We're using self.location a lot. I wonder if it would be better to store it in a variable and then reference that instead of call the property function every time. I don't know if it matters. All right, so we need to get rid of all of these. I mean, they shouldn't hurt anything, I guess, if we left them, but don't need them anymore. This one's different though. Yeah, we're gonna need to fix this one at some point because it doesn't. We need an init tile. We need to basically do the same thing, but I'm not gonna mess with it right now because it's just different enough that I don't want to. Like, I want to get this one working, and then I'll know the code we need to do for the not gate. Arguably, you could say it would have been better probably to start with the not gate because it's one by one, but it's all right. All right, so we'll move that. We will move this. Yeah, totally the left click should be the place. Means we need to redo our logic. There we go. Still doesn't work. I didn't do the output panel. And I probably didn't do the button, or if I did, it might not be correct. I didn't do the output panel. So I'm gonna put this in here. Weird now that it's in the... And this one doesn't have input entities. The virtual push button has no input entities, right? Because it is it's all the way upstream, right? Nothing inputs into it except for the mouse clicking it, right? Which is handled separately. That's not an entity. That's like a, conceptual thing. Okay, here we go. Maybe we should have it disappear as soon as you right click it. That would let you know that you're moving it. Like, it would be nice if it followed your mouse. It would be nice if it followed your mouse, but it would be tricky. Maybe when you cut the gate, right click, memorize its properties, and then when you paste it, delete the original and create a new one so it reruns. That probably would have fixed my issue as well, I think. There we go. It is now working though. Got those ones good. Sweet. Okay, so we can move gates. Well, we can move gates, outputs, and push buttons. We should do wires. I guess I'll do wire. I guess I'll do wires. Yeah, at some point I want to change the wires, so I am a little hesitant to do too much to them because I think in the end it's going to end up fairly different, but we'll see. I don't know. Like I was saying before, I don't want to spend too much time on the wires. Like, I want them to be how I want them, but I also don't think it's that important. And there's a lot of other stuff that is probably more important to put time into. I do kind of want them how I want them. It's the internal struggle that I must work through myself. I also can't quite describe how I want them all the way just yet. I actually figure that part out too. But I know that I don't want them how they are now. Oh. Should be all the wires. I'm gonna do just a horizontal. Great. Cool. Next would be have the existing wires. That is probably not happening. That would be convenient from the user's perspective, but it is probably not happening. It's another thing where it's like, I could probably do that given enough time, but I think that there's not going to be that much time to work on this, basically. Because that creates a whole cascade of like, once I go back and do the logic for the thing I made the note for a minute ago, validate the landing zone, that like explodes that problem into a much larger one. But like I said, it would definitely be convenient. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with movement. I think that should be good. About 45 minutes. Should we take... Let me just, like, let's entertain for a second. What if we wanted it to move with the mouse? What would that look like? How would we do that? So, if we wanted it to move with the mouse, I think the thing that we would need to do is... I think we want another tile grid. So what I do not want to do is, as the mouse moves, I do not want to place that object into the workspace tile grid. Because that could erase what's there, first of all, which I don't want. And it will make the moving thing like kerchunk, kerchunk, kerchunk to be aligned with the grid, right? Because remember, we're in a tile grid, so there's like an imaginary 24 by 24 pixel grid here. This is like 1 square in the grid, this is 2 squares, this is 2 squares. I don't want it to like chunk, kerchunk, kerchunk while you're dragging it. So we need another tile grid that gets placed on top and essentially moves with the mouse. I think I would like to try to do this, because this is like a 2 birds, 1 scone thing. It's gonna give visual feedback to moving, which doesn't exist right now, because like if I, right-click the button, like visually nothing happened, and if I go right-click somewhere else, then it moves, but I don't necessarily know that my request to initiate moving worked. Whereas if it disappears when you click it and it starts moving with your mouse, then you know for sure that you are moving it. That communicates a lot to the user. So let's say we have a mouse moving tile grid. And this is gonna use the... So actually it needs to be after the workspace gets initialized, because I'm actually gonna reuse the sprite sheet and the sprite sheet pixel shader from the workspace. What about tri-state, open collector, and open emitter outputs? So I will freely admit I do not know what those are. I'm assuming they're different kinds of, maybe not gates necessarily, but different kinds of like logic entities. And the short answer probably is that I do not necessarily intend on adding any more entities unless, basically, unless Lady Ada wants me to. Ultimately, she directs, like, my work time on this kind of stuff. So I would say the gates that are there now are the main ones. The main ones. But if I show it to her and she's like, hey, could you add these other ones? Then I totally will. But that's, yeah, it will depend on that probably. That being said, like with all of the rest of everything that I do for Adafruit, it's all open source, right? So anyone could totally take it and add more stuff to it for sure. Okay, we need, so I'm just gonna hard code this actually. Should do width first. So right now, all of the entities fit within a 3x2, a 2x3 grid. So we want this to be big enough to fit any entity that we could be moving. So the default tile is going to be empty, which we could just copy it from somewhere. I think I could maybe... I could probably import it, I guess. Actually, maybe let's import it. That way, if I ever change it again, I don't have to. I only have to change it in one place. Honestly, this should probably just be actually inside the workspace, right? Reason why this should be out here. Sir? Actually, there is. The reason why this should be out here is because in the workspace, we don't get notified of the mouse's location until it clicks. The mouse update happens out here, which means we're going to get the location of the mouse out here, and we're not giving that to the workspace right now until we call handle mouse click. Then we give it the location and the buttons that were pressed. And I don't necessarily want to be passing in the mouse location every single frame of the loop. I think I'd rather not do that. So instead, we create this here. We have our tile grid. Those set to empty. And I think what I'll do is just not add it to the group. We'll only add it to the group when we're using it, and then we'll remove it, I think, when we're done. No. We're not going to do that, actually. Well... Okay, so one thing that's tricky with this is if this is out here in CodePy rather than inside workspace, like I was just debating a second ago, if it's out here in CodePy, that means CodePy has got to be responsible for hiding it when the time comes to hide it. Which is hard because we don't know. The logic inside of here is what decides when we're done with it, right? When the user right clicks again, that's when, you know, and it's a valid landing zone, especially once we add that validation of making sure it's empty. Only then do we know that we're done moving. Okay, I think let's put it inside the workspace. But let's put it inside the workspace, but then we'll still honestly, it's also awkward to have to do it when it starts moving out here. How about, okay, so how about this? So let's go main group dot append. Well, We want this on top though, right? Do we want it on top of the mouse? No, we want the mouse on top of it. We do want it on top of the workspace though. So we append the workspace mouse move thingy, whatever I called this. Tile grid. So we add that. I think what we can do actually though is we can say that visible false. So we can set it to true and we want to use it false otherwise. All right, so now it lives in workspace, but we're going to move it out here. So what we'll do is, let's say if workspace dot mouse moving tile grid dot visible, so if it is visible, then move it Yeah, I just foresaw another problem, but I think I had the solution to it. So if it is visible, then move it. So workspace dot mouse moving tile grid dot let's say dot x. No, okay, so the yeah. So the x is gonna be mouse.x. The y is gonna be mouse.y minus, I'm just gonna hard code 24 because we want to offset it. Same reason how I moved it so that when you clicked to place the gate, we changed it so that the click lined up with this tile right here instead of this tile up here. Okay. So now let's try when we handle the click. So when we have a moving entity, we go the mouse moving tg dot visible is going to get set to true. Down here, when it's set back to none, we're going to set that to false. And then the last thing I think we need to do is update the tiles. So I think to update the tiles, we can go so I'm going to make a function for this. We'll pass in the entity that we want to set the tiles on it for. And we will go mouse moving tile grid. We need to make a loop actually for location in entity.tile locations. We want to set the tile grid location X, but we actually need to like zero base it. So the entity.tile locations, this is within the workspace, but we need these to be zero. These to be offset back to zero. So we actually want to subtract the entity.location. And then for lock Y, we would subtract entity.location 0 for X. Location 1 for Y. Okay. So we're updating that tile inside the mouse tile grid to entity.tiles I. Which we're going to get from enumerate. All right, let's try it out. Catch up on the chat here. Interesting idea. Those are shared signal bus outputs that could be fun to model or represent a more advanced concept of logic design. I'm thinking. Agreed. A wired OR is a circuit implementation detail that could be drawn as an explicit gate in logic design. I regress. Then there's the concept of using digital gates for analog signals, like creating an oscillator from CMOS inverters. In RC circuits, if you remember RTL gates, it could also be used as a linear amplifier. A rabbit hole for sure. CMOS inverter oscillator is only analog in the sense that the slew rate and the propagation delays exist, but it's logically still digital. Don't know much about RTL. Yeah, I think both of y'all are way ahead of me. I know next to nothing about both of them, about any of them, really. We need to say this is going to be the moving entity. Yeah, give it a try. Can't set visible. Not. Oh, it's not visible, it's hidden. Backwards. I think, right? I have one in here as well for moving, right? So we need not. All right, 1 second. I do gotta run to the restroom again. I'll be right back. Okay. So one thing that I think is, I think that the one high entities are not going to work right. So the output panel and the virtual push button, I think, are not going to work right. Of course, also didn't work. Tile must be 0 to 0. I think I did not set the tile height and width. Yeah, tile. We need both of those. I'm not positive that that's the only error though, because I don't quite understand how that led to that error message, but oh, okay. Oh, I mean, is that so bad? It said, looks like I did a capital H. Yeah. Hmm. All right, so one thing that would be nice is right now the mouse is sort of anchored to the very tippy tip top left of the tile that is this tile right here, right? It might be nice if it was like kind of centered a little bit more on that. Um, so we could go here -12 and another 12 here. That's I don't do it that way. That. So that would fix that. The other thing, which is also immediately obvious, is the colors. Not ahead of you, Tim, in parallel. Yeah, that's real nice, actually. I do like that. Do I want to try to fix the colors? Um... So what would we consider correct for the colors? I could actually also click on this right tile as well. I think it will kind of snap over because now it's going to align the mouse with the left tile. But you can actually click on a different one as well. So, I mean, I'm partially like, what if we just turn the wires black while we're moving? But that would technically be incorrect for the NOT gate, right? The NOT gate, the input wire should be black while it's moving because it's not hooked up. But the output wire, technically speaking, should be green, right? Because not of none, not of off is on. So if we wanted the NOT gate to be actually technically correct, we would need its left wire, its input wire to be black, and its output wire to be green. Which we could maybe do, but it's like a lot of extra logic. And there's a few other gates that behave the same way where having false inputs would lead to a true output. I don't think I want to mess with it, honestly. So I think I land on either when we move it, all the wires are black, even though that's technically incorrect for the NOT gate and some of the other ones. Or option 2, we just leave it as it is now. The one that we're moving has red and green and blue. If you wanted to, you could make the wires green for 1, red for 0, and black for not connected. We could do that. Yeah, right now I'm using black for 0 and green for 1. But I do use green and red for the exact same concepts on the virtual push button. We do still have the same question of like, even if we do that, like, do we? Well, no, I mean, it would answer that question. I guess we'd make them black in that case. I don't think I want a third. Well, yeah, I don't think I want a third state. It would solve the problem, but I don't think I want the complexity that it adds, basically, because it would mean it would make the color of the wire deviate from the logic of the dot value property. Right now, the dot value property always returns a Boolean, either true or false. It does not return none. And I think I want the color of the wires, like, conceptually to match that, even though none is probably, like, more accurate to the real world, perhaps. But I don't want to add a third option to value either, right? I don't really want value to return none. May not need to. I do think I like black while moving, though. So I think we could easily just do that. We could do black while moving. And the way that we would do that is we want to make a new palette, 8 colors. I don't think there's a mechanism to copy a palette. Length of that one. Actually, in that case, we could just do for color in. So bring over all the colors from the existing palette, but then we want to go and change some. Oh, actually, we do want that. Yeah, no, I want that. We also want to change 3, 4, and 5 to be black. Black is index 1. We want to change dark red, dark green, dark blue to be 1 for black. Oh. No. This is a palette, though, not a palette mapper. With a palette mapper, we would want to remap it to 1. With a palette, then a literal actual palette, we want to set it to the color black. And then we would use that palette for this. Oh. Ooh. Need the index. Okay. There we go. One thing that we haven't done is remove it when we click. Just notice, like, if I right click the output panel here, oh. Okay. Two things, actually. So one thing is we need to clear the tiles in the mouse moving thing whenever we use it. So in here, we actually need to also say, is there, I think, fill? Fill? I thought there was a way to set all the tiles at once. That's what's linked. So there's default tile here, which will set all the tiles to something, but that's only in the init. Yeah, fill. Does it have a length? A loop over it with a length? Might not be able to do this. We could multiply width and height. So it would be range of, oh, and that's gonna be width in tiles. So that'll be 2 in our case. We know it's 2 by 3. Could just hard code 6. Way if we ever I end up changing it for some. Keep working. Python is a bit rusty. Couldn't you just say palette 1 equals palette? I think you. So like so you don't need the parentheses if you do that, but you can. I believe you can do that without the parentheses. But the thing that you'll be doing is you'll be assigning a new variable that points to the same palette object, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but this is the way I think it works. If you were to do it that way, again without parentheses, you'd be making a new sort of pointer that points to the same palette object, which means if you updated the palette, you'd actually be changing both palettes, or really what you're doing is you're changing the one palette that both variables point to. What we need or what we want in this case is like a duplicate palette. I want to like make a copy of the palette so that I have 2 actual palettes and I can change them independently. Because I want my original one to remain with its original colors, and I want my new one to have new colors. I mean, I guess technically changing the original ones red, green, and blue to black, I probably wouldn't actually hurt anything. So I guess we could do that. I don't think that would break anything. So in this case, it actually might not matter that they point to the same palette. But in my head, it feels nicer if they don't. And I could be wrong about it not breaking anything. There could be something that it does actually break. I'm not sure. Okay. Now this. What? What? Set these all to empty. Oh. We want times. Yeah, comma makes that way different, huh? I still keep right-clicking, yeah, or left-clicking. I mean, I definitely left-click should drop instead of right-click. So right-click to pick up, left-click to drop. I will totally change that. Okay, this is what I was gonna get to eventually. So now our next problem is that I have subtracted the location to zero base the top left corner, which is what I wanted for the gate, since the gate does actually occupy a 2x3 grid, 2 wide by 3 tall. But for the output panel, we don't want that. So the way this is subtracting entity location makes us zero base everything we put in the mouse tile grid. Which is what we want for the gates, the 2x3s, but for the things, for the entities that are only 1 tall, we don't want it to actually be zero base. We would want it to be index 2 based, which is the one below 0, 0. So let's call it an XY instead of just I. So it would be the tile that's at 0, 1. So still on the left, but 1 down. That's actually where we want to put the 1 tall entities while we're moving them. At one point, I had a thing called entity size, and I deleted it because I thought it was unnecessary. I think actually now is the time to bring it back. So let's say the parent class is just 1 by 1. The output panel I don't even know where it took those from. The output panel is 2 wide by 1 tall. The virtual push button is 1 by 1, which is technically the default anyway. We wouldn't have to update it, but I'm going to do it just to be explicit. All of these are 1 by 1. All the wires. And I'm probably going to change the way the wires work anyway. Maybe. Not for sure. I would like to. I think you heard my struggle with that earlier. So try not to just redo the same thing. And then the 2 output, 1 input gate. We could just override size here. That's 2 by 3. So if you do this, what do you get? 0. And if you do this, you get 1. So what we will do then is inside that set mouse tile grid, we will go midpoint offset, I'm going to call this. I don't know if that's really a good name or not, but it's what I got off the top of my head. We're going to say that is the entity dot size height, so index 1 over 2. So for 3 tall entities, that's going to be 1. For 1 tall entities, that's going to be 0. Shoot. It's kind of backwards, though. I really want 1 for 1 tall entities and 0 for 2 tall entities. Okay, this is less flexible. Well, I mean, it's not less flexible because that code wasn't going to work. So this conceptually is less flexible than if I had thought of math that actually worked. So we're going to say, I'm actually going to keep the same variable name. So midpoint offset, that's going to be 1 if entity dot size height, so index 1. So if the height is 1, then we use 1 as the offset. Else, we know the height's going to be 3, so I'm going to use 0. So very inflexible if we were to ever introduce entities that have a different height that is not 3 or 1. This would be wrecked. But I'm okay with that. So then we will also, for the y value right here, split these so they're a little easier to read. For the y value, we would also add the offset. Yeah. It looks like there are 6 in a gate. Yeah, a gate. Well, it depends, I guess, on how you consider it. So as a rectangle, as a full rectangle that must remain a rectangle, a gate, like a logic gate, an AND gate, or an OR gate, all of those do occupy 6 tiles. 2 wide by 3 tall. But if you choose not to consider it as a full rectangle, then the gate actually only occupies 4 tiles. So it's these 3 and then this 1. And technically this tile and this tile are not part of the gate, at least so far as, like, in the code 2 input 1 output, there are, well, actually in the code for a gate, let's say there are 4 tile indexes. Those are the indexes within the sprite sheet. So there's 4 tiles that represent the gate. But in that case, it's not considering the full rectangle. It's just considering the actual literal tiles that are visually occupied. The top right one here and the bottom right one here are not handled by the entity class or any of its subclasses. But the mouse thing is making a full rectangle, so it has 2 by 3. Hopefully that made sense. Nice. Oh. That's fine, actually. It's a little weird, but it's fine. It should change when I place it. The one thing is it does... Well, does it keep its state? I think it does, actually. It doesn't show its state while it's moving, but it does keep its state. So if you move it in a state, it will drop back into that same state. It might be kind of cool if it would keep its state while it's moving, but much like the wires, it's less complexity than the wires would have been, since there's not multiple ones. Like a gate has 2 inputs and 1 output. We'd have to do all 3 of them if we wanted to turn the wires correctly. This doesn't have that many things, but it is still complexity that doesn't, like... It's not entirely necessary, basically. It would have to, like... There'd have to be a special case for the button, essentially. For the virtual push button, it would need, like, a special case that goes and says, hey, what was the pressed state of the button when it started moving? And then we would need to update the palette for the mouse tile grid to the correct color, but then we would also need to put it back anytime we're moving a thing that's not a virtual push button, because every other entity, we want white to remain as white, right? We wouldn't want... I have no idea why. I guess I must have clicked. That must have been another double click. That's weird that stayed that way. That is actually really weird. Yeah, that's not great. So I think I started talking about this problem earlier. This problem effectively boils down to the fact that when we update the simulation, we start at an output, and we don't actually have an output here, which means this whole track is not actually getting updated when we update the simulation. We need to put the output panel on it for it to get updated. Yeah. So I think the way that we should handle that... Yeah. So I don't know, actually. Let me rephrase. I just started to say the way that we should handle that. And I'm actually not certain that we should handle it. If we're going to handle it, one way that we could handle it would be inside of update. Maybe we keep a reference to every entity that... it's really hard to do, though, because... I was going to say if we could keep... Like, if we had a way to keep a record that says, like, this entity got updated as part of this update call, right? And so when update got called on this output, it chains through the logic gate and it chains all the way back down to both push buttons if there's two connected, or whatever is connected here, right? It doesn't actually have to be a push button. It could be something else. But the output will follow that trace all the way back. So it will take care of updating every entity that is in that whole chain starting from the output. If we could keep a record of that, which I don't actually know how we would do, but let's not think too hard about that part. Let's just assume for a second we could. Somehow we could make a little note that says we updated this entity. Then at the very end, we could loop over all the entities again, which is not super efficient. We could check whether or not each one got updated. And if it didn't, then we could I guess call like apply state, I think is what we would need to do. Or call value. I think we would need to call value. What would happen? Okay, out of curiosity, what would happen if we do this? What if we just said entity.value? Alright, underscore equals entity.value. So basically, like, I just want to call the value property because that should, like, internally, that should update the entity to have the right wire colors, I think. The downside, though, this is like duplicating a bunch of work. Whoops. Also, I just wrecked it with my mouse. This is duplicating a bunch of work because the output entity, in this case the panel, when we call update on it, like I've been saying, it's going to chain its way backwards. It's going to call value on all the other entities that are connected to it. But this logic here is also going to call value on every entity that's not an output. So we're going to be calling value on the same entity multiple times, twice in fact, unless it's an output. The outputs we would only call it once by way of update. It's actually not called value inside there, but that's a whole nother story. Maybe it doesn't matter. So yeah, technically that worked. It also means this can work, which is nice. I think actually before that would not have worked. So we would have clicked this button. There would have been a little tiny tick of wire right there that turned the right color, but then the whole rest of this would have actually just stayed black. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's okay. I don't like that it's duplicating. Like, basically that means we're gonna end up calling apply palette twice, which means we're gonna end up looping over the colors. There's like, it's kind of a whole cascade of stuff that we're doing multiple times now, which I don't super duper care for, but not the end of the world either necessarily, maybe. Okay. I think I'm gonna call it quits for the day there. We made quite a bit of progress being able to move the entities around. I think we are in a good place for being able to add entities now because we're basically going to be able to like reuse everything I've done today for adding entities is actually going to be super easy, because when we go and we click the add button and we choose what entity we want to add, all we're going to have to do is make a new instance of the type that was selected, and then set that new instance as the moving entity, and everything else like just works because we've done what we did today. I'm pretty sure, which is super cool. All right, that is going to do it for the day. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thanks, Gordy G, C. Grover, and the folks in the chat. That's everyone we had today, right? Yeah. So thanks to the folks in the chat. Like I said at the top, I will be back next week. So deep dive on the 10th, next Friday. My stream on Saturday on the 11th. But no streams the following week. 17th, no deep dive. 18th, no stream on Saturday. So we'll be here next week, but we will not be here the week after. Yeah, until then, I will bid you farewell. Hope you all have a good rest of your Saturday and a good weekend, and I will see you later.